Continuing with creating a rollout floater, let's look at the larger file that we saw and see how these three fit into it. Here is the new rollout floater statement. That's like this first line. Here we create one rollout. That's basically this statement, except the rollout has some content. Here we create another rollout. So that's just more or less a duplicate or a similar item to this. And here we create a third rollout. And then we have three add rollout statements. So where here we had one new rollout floater, one rollout, and one add rollout, here we have one new rollout floater, three rollouts, and three add rollouts. That is one add rollout for each rollout. So now let's go and look inside the rollouts and see what we have. So each rollout, as usual, is divided into the interface controls and the event handlers. So here we have two buttons for the controls and an on-pressed event handler, one for each button. Here we have two pick buttons and two on-picked events, one for each button. And finally here we have a button and an on-pressed event for that button. So when the user presses this Create Sphere button, it triggers this event handler, which creates a sphere with a radius of 50 and recenter equal to true, which just means that the pivot point is moved to the bottom of the sphere, whereas by default the pivot point is in the middle of the sphere. These next two lines enable both of the buttons in the mod rollout. So that's the next rollout down here. It has two buttons, a bend button and a noise button. And these two lines enable both of those buttons. So until you click either the sphere button or the box button, both of these buttons are disabled because we have enabled false when we create them. So we don't want the user applying a modifier until the user has created some geometry. So we disable these until some geometry has been created. Once the user has clicked the sphere button, it will be disabled. We only want it used once. Same with the box button. In the second rollout here, when an object is picked, the picked object is passed to the event handler in a parameter. So here we have the help for the pick button. Go down to the onPicked event and you see this arg here. The arg argument will contain the selected object. And that is obj right here. So first we create the modifier, bend in this case with an angle of 90. Add that modifier to obj. Make the text on the button equal to the object name so that we know what we picked. And then disable that button. We only want that bend button used once. And the noise button is very similar. It creates a noise modifier with a strength of 25 in the x direction and nothing in the y and the z. It makes it fractal. It adds that modifier to the obj, that is the object that was selected with the pick button. Sets the text equal to the object name and disables that noise button, again so it can only be used once. And finally the rollout for closing the floater has a button. It says exit on it. Press that button and it executes close rollout floater on this modifier dialog rollout floater object. And that exits the floater. So this file is in the work files that accompany these tutorials, rolloutfloater.ms. I encourage you to play around with it. And the structure of it, again, is just create the rollout floater, create one or more rollouts, and then add those rollouts to the floater.